The Infinity Castle arc is where all of the branching narratives and paths of the Demon Slayer story come to a head, acting as the very last obstacle standing in the Demon Slayer Corps' way of eliminating Muzan Kibutsuji once and for all. But before Muzan can be dealt with, there's still the 3 strongest Upper Moon demons that have remained unchanged for centuries, as well as 2 new replacements. So I thought it would be fun to deep dive into each one of these major confrontations and dissect all of their story beats as each of these final battles get their full animated polish in the movie trilogy to come. So whether you're watching this before, during, or after you know what happens, in my opinion, this is the absolute peak of the Demon Slayer story, so there will definitely be something to learn or appreciate, no matter what angle you're approaching this from. Keep in mind, while the rankings are all my opinion, I'm gonna do my best to highlight the unique ups and downs of every single fight we're discussing. So with that being said, like, subscribe, and let's not waste any more time getting right to the video. But first, ironically, a word from our sponsor, GamerSupps. Listen, if you need an energy drink that's gonna keep you going throughout the day while also not making you crash, and at the same time it's giving you a bunch of vitamins like C, D, and even some nootropics to keep you energized, that's GamerSupps for you. The reason why they're super cool is because not only if you've never tried them before, they'll give you a free sample if you use my code NOOP, they'll also just give you 10% off your order if you use the code anyway. Try some flavors from your favorite anime like JoJo's or Darling in the Franxx. Again, use my link in the description or code NOOP for 10% off your order, or if you're a new customer, go get some free samples on me and I guarantee you'll be buying some more. Thank you GamerSupps for sponsoring the channel. The lowest fight on this roster was probably pretty obvious to anyone who has already fully read this arc of Demon Slayer to its completion. It would have been hard-pressed to really call this a full-fledged battle or put this over anything else, as this mostly goes, I would have been hard-pressed to really call this a full-fledged battle and really put this over anything else, especially since it mostly goes on in the background of all the other confrontations going on. So to be honest, it mostly exists in my opinion to give the Snake and Love Hashira something to do, as they are integral participants in the final battle with Muzan after all of this. Which is a shame, because not only does Obanai not really get a story arc of his own to fully shine like the other Hashira, Nakime, the Biwa playing demon that we've seen get foreshadowed for pretty much the entire series, just ends up getting reduced to a mere Tombo drum demon on steroids, because we see so little of this battle. And honestly, for what we do see, Nakime poses a significant threat to both of the Hashira pretty effortlessly. If it wasn't for Yushiro showing up to mess with Nakime and turn the tides, I fully believe she probably could have brought about that false future, quote unquote, that Muzan was shown of Mitsuri and Obanai's death. Nothing against the two of them, but Nakime controlling the Infinity Castle as effortlessly as she does definitely makes me believe she would have been an extremely difficult Upper Moon to take on if the plot didn't go against her, especially considering she was still moving other parts of the castle while all of this fighting was going on. I understand why she had to be dealt so swiftly, so I'm not even mad about how this fight progresses. It's just genuinely the battle with the least bit of content, so no hard feelings, it just ranks at the bottom. This is a battle that I definitely have much stronger opinions on, and I'm sure with how divisive it tends to be in the community, this is gonna make or break my trust for a lot of you guys for the rest of this video, but I have to give you my honest thoughts. For how little is flashed and sprinkled to us about Zenitsu and Kaigaku's past, I'd like to think for what it's worth, it does actually all tie together pretty coherently for their characters. It's not like their rivalry just comes out of nowhere, and I genuinely do appreciate the dynamic of Kaigaku being Zenitsu's polar opposite, Zenitsu spending most of the story only being able to master the first initial form of thunder breathing, and despite making numerous additions and upgrades to its overall versatility and power, he has yet to, and doesn't seem like he ever will, be capable of learning any of the other forms. On the other hand, there's Kaigaku, who is able to fluently utilize all of the thunder breathing forms except the base foundation of the first form, and because of that, Kaigaku essentially knows all of the extensions while lacking the root source of the skill, which speaks volumes on how both of Zenitsu's and Kaigaku's immaturity is unique to them. Kaigaku is, for lack of any other words, an arrogant prick. It makes sense that in efforts to master as much of thunder breathing as he could, he would cut corners and take the quickest and most weaselly way to the goal by neglecting the foundation of thunder breathing as a whole. That very same ignorance is what leads him to denounce honor in favor of survival, seeing no shame in kneeling out of fear to Kokushibo in order to live and fight another day. And sure, I don't necessarily disagree with rejecting the ideal of callously throwing away, one's life for delusions of grandeur like valor in battle or martyrdom, but Kaigaku isn't submitting to Kokushibo because any of that. It's not like he's just submitting because he knows he won't win and he'd just rather accept defeat. Kaigaku is kneeling out of cowardice, and when he's faced with the ultimate evil, which again, as a demon slayer, you're supposed to be more than willing to go up against, he crumbles and listens to whatever Kokushibo says. And then he tries to brush all of this demonic transformation off as something that quote-unquote anyone would do in the face of such overwhelming strength, which one is a fucking lie, because Rengoku would never, nor would any other Hashira of this generation fighting the good fight in Infinity Castle right now, proven as much by Muichiro later, who rejects the offer to become a demon from Kokushibo. This is just your classic bit of someone who is just out of their right mind and purely evil, assuming that everyone else thinks as dastardly and underhandedly as they do, when it's just normally not the case. All of that big rant just to say Kaigaku always lacked humanity, right? Even before he took Muzan's blood. He would not have given a crap about grandfather's death, whether Kaigaku was truly quote-unquote alive or not. And sure, it's very easy to criticize this fight for just trying to jam-pack all of this drama and tension of Zenitsu and Kaigaku's conflict into this small amount of time, but in my opinion, there are still narratives to appreciate despite that. The biggest place where this fight falls, in my opinion, is the loss of any interesting choreography or paneling in favor of having these two hash out their issues through dialogue. And to elaborate on what I mean, I'm not saying I have an issue with Kaigaku and Zenitsu talking at one another to clash in both ideals and beliefs while they're also clashing blades. My big issue is this fight honestly feels more like an obligatory showcase of the other remaining forms of thunder breathing all in one quick succession. Meanwhile, Kaigaku is explaining his new blood demon art as the two's story and argument gets unfolded to us. And then in almost no time at all, Upper Moon 6 is decapitated by Zenitsu's new 7th form, and that kind of comes out of nowhere? I mean, again, you can't say that it comes out of nowhere because it's not really coming out of nowhere. I even said earlier, Zenitsu has been reworking and changing the Thunderclap and Flash to become his own unique thing, even as early on as the Entertainment District. It's not exactly out of left field for Zenitsu to do something like this. It even fits perfectly in the dynamic between the two rivals. While Kaigaku thinks the quote-unquote old man held out on information, Zenitsu clarifies this form is his own creation, which is something Kaigaku could never do since, he never mastered that base form. He can't stem off from the source that he doesn't have. However, Zenitsu, knowing the first form of thunder breathing inside and out like the back of his hand, even without knowing any of the other forms, is just able to skip all of that and master it his own way. I also hate the idea that if this fight happened a year later, Zenitsu never would have been able to win, because while I do understand it makes sense lore-wise, considering, a demon slayer that turns into an upper moon, as we see with Kokushibo later, is just one of the most powerful beings ever created. But just shut the fuck up. Let Zenitsu have his win. Damn, why do we gotta spit on him when he's knocked out? He just took out Upper Moon 6. We can't keep this information to ourselves and celebrate a little bit? In all seriousness, I hate to say it, but this fight to me felt extremely rushed and just plopped into this arc so we could finish Zenitsu's character. I will, at the very end of the video, talk about how I understand that all of this was rushed for the author's personal reasons, and again, I'm sure that all of the story we got was always the plan. You can see this is just where a lack of time hits the hardest. As compared to the other fights we'll be discussing, this one seems to be affected by all of that the most. Speaking of fights that feel affected by the author's rushed pacing, the encounter with Upper Moon 2 Doma is the one that hurts most personally, because I feel like out of all the Upper Moons that deserve their own dedicated arc, Doma had all of the interesting and exciting narrative to have the best one out of the whole story. Almost all of the pieces are already there. Doma not only ties into both Shinobu and Kanai's characters, but also Inosuke's. If Zenitsu's fight is the one that suffers the most choreography wise, Doma versus everyone is the battle that lost the most overall story potential wise. I mean, Doma has the entire origin story of being the leader of the Eternal Paradise faith that could have been explored to such a larger degree. This large spanning cult that had to be limited to only 250 members at a time because Muzan didn't want Doma to stand out too much. An entire organization dedicated just getting Doma victims to devour and having followers that are able to be exploited, commanded, and help guard Doma. Everybody loved Entertainment Arc for a reason, and that's because it was effectively able to make use of its setting and how it tied Upper Moon 6, Daki, and Gyutaro's stories into the scenery of everything. I don't know about you, but I mean, everything surrounding Doma is definitely something that would stand out to me more than like Swordsmith Village, no offense, which feels a little haphazardly thrown together as some crisis situation for the less interesting Upper Moon, Gyoko, and Hantengu. Not that I don't like Gyoko or Hantengu, by the way. I think they're both interesting and fun. However, Gyoko just gets instantly no-diffed by Muichiro, so I can't say I care too much about him. And Hantengu, while being the big star of Swordsmith Village, I mean, if you gave me a choice between keeping everything that he contributed to the plot, and I could trade that all for a fully fleshed out batch of chapters to not only explore Doma and the cult, but fully get into and have more drama and time for the Inosuke and Shinobu stories to breathe, I'd throw my money at that alternate timeline in a heartbeat. Because just watching Doma in this brief section of Infinity Arc is some of my favorite parts of the story. As an opponent, Doma is just like one of the most obnoxious villains to fight. He's sassy, he's witty, always following up every attack or dodge with a one-liner or quip, but that cockiness is backed up by his strong edge in battle that's made very apparent by how little Doma tries, like, or even seems worried in either of the battles in this technical spot. Doma is analytical. He figures out all of his opponent's moves and strategies one by one, responds to them like it's child's play. He's even directly calling out the amount of sword swings Shinobu or Kanai are using. He instantly discovers Kanai's eyes are what give her the advantage. He even moves so quick he just steals Kanai's sword. This man was a menace. And that's just because Doma was also legitimately blessed with the most overpowered blood demon art in the entire series. Just straight up ice manipulation. Creates heaps and torrents of powdered ice or blizzards. He can also create clones of himself that are supposedly just as strong and able to fight on their own, showing that at the very end of all of this big battle and strife on the Demon Slayer's part, it was all just one big performance because Doma had the power to kill all of these guys the moment they entered his building. This cockiness and bad habit of playing with his food does ultimately lay the trail to Doma's downfall, which is poetic because it's nice that all of Kanai, Shinobu's, and Inosuke's efforts do eventually amount to something, and it all plays into this big performance idea, right? Which narratively ties into Doma's character flawlessly because as Kanai correctly points out, when Doma is, crying at Akaza's death, she says that Doma is lying and he doesn't feel anything. Even before Doma was a demon, he was born a sociopath. He lacked empathy, sympathy, he had no genuine feeling or cares for anybody. So all of this big whimsical personality and the witty banter he puts on, it's all one big facade. He's actually just one big empty void of emotion and just tries to pretend and act how he feels will make him the most charming, which unironically worked on me because he's one of my favorite Upper Moons. But again, that added layer of Doma's character once again shows how the mangaka is able to flawlessly weave Doma's character into his end. Because when Doma does finally meet his end at the hands of Shinobu's poison, unlike his fellow demons Akaza and Kokushibo, because Doma does lack feelings, care, or any real desires, he has no drive to carry himself into the next stage of demonhood and surpass decapitation. Where both Upper Moon 1 and 3 teeter on evolving past that threat, Doma even admits himself, almost half-heartedly, he's probably not going to go any further than he already has. It's just sad to me to think how much more Doma's story could have been expanded. Getting the story of Shinobu's sister, Inosuke's mom, all of that stuff packaged into these quick chapters and fights. It's just similar to the situation with Kaigaku and Zenitsu. All of these puzzle pieces were clearly here and have been laid out. It's just there wasn't enough time to arrange them satisfyingly. And I do still think everything, sticks a landing, at least way more so in my opinion than Kaigaku and Zenitsu. But it just, for me, what disappoints is the feeling and knowing that this could have been so much better than what we got. The The difference between this fight and all of the previously ranked ones is that Akaza vs Tanjiro and Giyu actually feels like it was meant to be here. As a penultimate threat and one of the last bosses in the gauntlet before the final boss Muzan, Akaza fits that role perfectly. This is because, compared to everyone else, we've spent a lot of time with Akaza, letting the tension of Rengoku's death properly breathe and cook up a resolve for our main character. That way, when we're in the fight and Akaza starts shit-talking Rengoku and Tanjiro is staring down what essentially has become his arch nemesis, you feel and relate to the anger this main character of the manga is feeling. We have also mourned for Rengoku and built up a want to see Tanjiro get some kind of revenge. Watching him getting this far into the narrative where Tanjiro can actually cut through a demon of Akaza's level, all of that hype and narrative actually pays off and instantly floods our dopamine receptors. And that's mainly because, unlike the previous fights where we have to take some time away in order to do the groundwork for a story that frankly should have already been done, we can just fully immerse ourselves in Tanjiro's clash against Upper Moon 3 because there's not any extra additional information we need to be filled in on that honestly isn't relative to what's going on right now. Because the short little backstories and cuts that we do get only add on to what already is existing. For one, we get a great representation of how far Tanjiro has come. All of those previous demon battles and struggles to master the Hinokami Kagura, everything comes to a head in a battle to the death against the pinnacle of what he's been fighting for. Moments like Tanjiro directly criticizing Akaza on his philosophy disregarding the weak, and Akaza proving Tanjiro right by admitting he was wrong about calling Tanjiro weak. Even the villain cannot deny the truth. There's also no better moment in the story when Tanjiro unlocks the transparent world, the absolute peak of what a demon slayer can possibly hope to achieve, and all of this is done by thinking back to his father's unique nature, deciphering the code of Akaza's strategy, and achieving a truly neutral state of being to stop Akaza's senses of fighting spirit, allowing Tanjiro and Giyu to deliver decapitation to Akaza, not with anger, vengeance, or resolve, but ironically, nothing at all clouding his will. By eliminating his fighting spirit and blinding Akaza's compass needle, Tanjiro becomes an almost inanimate object, surpassing the demon at his own game. And the parallel nature behind Tanjiro activating the supernatural ability and stopping Akaza's hand just before Giyu almost dies the exact same way Rengoku did is not lost on me. Giyu, also as a partner in this match, is amazing. He was the person that set Tanjiro off on his journey originally, and is the full representation of water breathing, the style that Tanjiro began this long quest with. It's satisfying to watch Giyu fight on the same level as Tanjiro, to one again show how far Tanjiro has come, but also it's an addition to Giyu's character, who we just saw almost renounce everything in the short transitionary arc before this. And of course, Akaza is just as exhilarating as well to watch give his final dance, showing some of the last types of destructive death, and never once feeling like he was not the strongest presence in the room at any given point. I mean, even after this guy is decapitated, the smoke demon is still fighting and just retaking his stance. Yet somehow, the victory against Akaza still feels earned. And a lot of that has to do with the weight that we have to bear now that we know this poor man's tragic backstory. The meme about every demon getting a sad backstory has definitely not gotten old, but this one is one that not only ties into how Akaza is as a demon, because we know he managed to keep some sense of honor and integrity, vowing to never once devour a woman, despite their supposed nutrition according to Doma, and all of that ties into who he was as a human, that despite his awful circumstances in birth and committing crimes constantly, Akaza was only doing what he thought was right and wanted to help the people around him, whether it was his sickly father or Kaizo and Koyuki from the dojo. However, unfortunately, both of those families were stolen from him, and no matter how righteous those actions were that he tried to do, they were still actions that led to these people's deaths. I can't even blame Akaza for crashing out and killing the entire rival dojo. They probably deserved it. And even though the law is the law, I don't really blame my man for stealing food or medicine for his dad either. The message is, being poor is fucking tough, and when everything is against you, what more is someone supposed to do? This man literally found a place where he could beat the shit out of people legally and not get in trouble for it, and the universe still went against him, proving that sometimes no matter what you do, you're just fucked. And Akaza ended up as a demon because of that. And let's be honest, the people already thought Akaza was a demon demon anyway, and because Muzan only meets Akaza because he heard some other demon came to being outside of Muzan's blood. So why wouldn't Akaza just prove them right? It's not only understandable that Akaza would have had what it takes to surpass decapitation, because it's clear he did have the potential to one day surpass Doma and maybe even Kokushibo. However, Tanjiro, as always, was able to spit truth to Akaza, reminding him of the latent humanity that lied within him, because realistically, they probably stood no chance of ever overcoming a demon as powerful as him, which is something we'll see in the next and final fight on the roster. In conclusion, even though hell is not peaceful, at the very least, compared to what Akaza has been through, you can call it some kind of solitary rest. Like the second ranked fight, Kokushibo serves perfectly as one of these last threats to dispatch before all hands on deck against Muzan. For upper rank 1, supposedly the absolute strongest demon of all time, second only to Muzan, a demon that has reigned in his position for centuries, never once being threatened or challenged, Kokushibo's got all of the aura and evil presence to go along with that title. As I kind of talked about earlier in Kaigaku's section, there quite literally aren't many things at all that become more powerful than a demon slayer that has not only mastered breathing techniques, but has received Muzan's blood. Because not only do they require a significantly larger supply of it due to their natural human resistances being higher than the average person's, it's exceedingly rare for anybody to survive the amount of blood they require, which is the reason it's implied Kaigaku might have become an unstoppable threat given only one more year of growing into this new existence. It's really all purely done to set up the massive threat Kokushibo is supposed to pose. We have already seen how terrifying he can be in his short introductory scene where he settles the argument between Doma and Akaza, as just walking past Akaza is enough to send shivers down his spine. So when we see a prodigy like Muichiro, who essentially no-diffed Upper Moon 5, get absolutely worked around like he's a toy, seeing Kokushibo play with and download all of Muichiro's strategies, instantly just cutting off one of his arms and then pinning him to the wall and saying he's gonna force the boy to become a demon, it's insane. And what's crazier is when Genya tries to shoot him from a blind spot to save Muichiro, Upper Moon is already blinking behind Genya, slicing off an arm one by one, and then eventually just cleaves him in half. Because why? The villainous aura is just immaculate, that's why. For this whole impossible odd situation to then break out into one of the highest levels of battle we might ever receive in the series, which is saying something considering the final battle with Muzan still exists, it gives the Wind and Stone Hashira, Sanemi, and Gyome, who have had almost no time to shine themselves, a chance to show us what they have to offer, because again, they are the strongest Hashira. Not only is it extremely satisfying as well to get that narrative payoff of the Shinazugawa brothers, despite Kokushibo putting on the airs of being almost undefeatable, Gyome and Sanemi are able to make the impossible possible, keeping up with Upper Moon 1's power the entire fight. They unlock their marks, and although this might cost them early deaths, Gyome, which is crazy, coming sooner than anyone's because he's already 25, not even, bound to survive the night. The two of them unlocking their true potentials, Gyome and Muichiro unlocking the transparent worlds, the red Nichiren blades, Genya putting his life on the line and eating a piece of Kokushibo's sword to give him a chance of victory. This whole battle feels like one desperate crawl through hell that every character is giving their all not to surrender to. Whether you want to say winning came at Kokushibo just finally admitting defeat, or the Slayers actually finished the demon themselves, whatever you really want to attribute the victory to, the fact is a once in a millennia generation of Hashira were actually able to surpass Kokushibo, one of the originators of breathing techniques and a pillar of history for not just demon slayers, but demon kind as well. And forcing him to use his true power is extremely impressive. Seeing Kokushibo start the battle off using Transparent World, like right after witnessing how much of an advantage it gave to Tanjiro, really sets the stage for how fucked we are. And also, again, we know sun breathing, the origin and foundation of all techniques, is absolutely insane, especially seeing how the Hinokami Kagura has helped Tanjiro become a menace in battle. It just makes the reveal of moon breathing all the more horrifying, especially once Kokushibo's sword begins to extend and he goes full Sephiroth. You truly just see how having having the best of both worlds can rival even Muzan, and why a demon slayer becoming a demon is such a tempting offer. And when decapitation does come, just like Akaza, every instinct and demonic blood cell in Kokushibo's body is screaming to keep it pushing and surpass losing his head, quite literally becoming one with his own sword and sprouting a new head atop a twisted and disfigured body. However, as this demon rejects his loss, refusing to take any level of accountability for this spiral down madness, a glimpse of this monstrous form catches the reflection of a sword in front of Kokushibo, and for once in what could have been centuries, Kokushibo has the chance to see what he has actually become after hundreds of years of walking the earth past his expiration date, realizing just what refusing to admit defeat and rejecting the passing of the torch to the next generation has transformed Kokushibo into a hideous, disgusting monster that had spit on everything he and his old brother spent their original lifespans creating. Ironically enough, Kokushibo became a demon because he could never measure up to Yoriichi as a swordsman. Yet even after all of his chaos and self-indulgence, when faced with his long-lost brother in fatal combat, not even sacrificing everything he had was enough to measure up to this brother. In this final confrontation between siblings, Kokushibo loses. Not in reality, but as any man who has fought for nearly a century or longer would know, had that battle lasted a moment longer, Yoriichi would have decapitated Kokushibo and ended his story for good. Despite it taking centuries, as this memory flashes back into Kokushibo's mind mid-evolution, seeing himself for all that he is, he finally realizes that all of this strife really was for nothing. He betrayed the demon slayers, slaughtered his descendants, and refused to lose a fight that he rightfully should have lost. If becoming this dishonorable was all so Kokushibo could be like his brother, perhaps maybe even reaching a day where he could be better than him, that dream is not only unattainable now, but something he couldn't even achieve when given the chance. So if all of that is the case, what the hell is Kokushibo even still fighting for? A question that in the final moment quells Kokushibo's near half-millennia rage, just long enough for the demon to completely disappear and not take that next stage of demon evolution. This fight does unfortunately also end with the loss of both Genya Shinazugawa and Muichiro Tokito. However, with how hard everyone fought to get to this point and the exceptional way all three of these characters come to an end, as in including Kokushibo, it makes for the most satisfying and definitely what is, in my opinion, the best fight out of all of Infinity Castle. And there you go, every single fight in Demon Slayer's Infinity Castle fully ranked and explained. I'm sure some of you guys all have your own favorite fights, and honestly, considering the chosen top 3, I really wouldn't blame you if you swapped any of those around. Just to be clear, if anyone was curious, I probably would rank the last and final fight of the series against Muzan somewhere between Kaigaku and Doma. I didn't want to take too much focus away from Infinity Castle in this video or spoil it for movie watchers, but without getting too far into it, my thoughts on this fight are that simply it feels a bit underwhelming, at least in the manga, and this may all get fixed towards the end of the anime. So if you guys are curious, definitely hit that like button and subscribe, comment down below, and I will make that video fully giving my thoughts and ideas of what the Muzan fight was like, because that's over 20 chapters long. I could at least make a good video about that. But that's all from me today. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below on what your favorite fights and moments are yourself. This is your second reminder to hit that like button, as it really helps the channel's algorithm, especially subscribing, so I can catch you guys in the next video. On that note, I'll see you guys there. Peace.